I'm Rabbi Susan Abramson. I'm the rabbi at Temple Shalom Emeth in Burlington, Massachusetts. And today I'm here to teach you how to make one of the most important recipes in my Shabbat Rabbi Rocketpower book, how to make challah. Challah is a ceremonial bread that we eat on Shabbat and on Jewish holidays. There are very few ingredients that you need in order to make challah. First, you need yeast and hot water mixed with a little bit of sugar, and then you make a mixture with egg, and I use canola oil, and then finally we add flour. Just as there are few ingredients, there are also very few utensils that you need. You need a measuring cup that goes up to 2 cups, a large bowl, a tablespoon measurement, and just a regular spoon and a little bowl to mix some ingredients, and something to measure out the flour in, and finally a baking pan. So the very, very first step is to put equal amounts of yeast and sugar into the bowl. Okay, so now I'm going to add really, really hot water, and I'm going to put it slowly in the mixture with the yeast and the sugar, and then I'm going to stir it so it's all mixed up. And the most exciting part of making challah is the actual yeast starts to expand. The hotter the water is, the quicker that happens. And once the bubbles have appeared, then we can add the mixture to the yeast. Okay, so now that it's foamy, we're going to start to put the ingredients that we're going to put into the mixture. And so we're going to add about 3 tablespoons of sugar. And by the way, one important thing about challah, at least the way I make it, is nothing is precise. Okay, so we've got our sugar, and then we're going to crack an egg and put it there. Then we're going to add 2 tablespoons of canola oil. Okay, we use a little pinch of salt, and then we stir this all up. And you can see how much it's foamed by how much the mixture separates the foam. And now we're ready to add in the flour. Now again, I'm somebody who's very imprecise in my measurements, because the bottom line is that you need the dough to be a certain consistency. So first I usually start with the unbleached flour, and I just dump some in. And the idea here is that you want to get all the lumps out. I think it actually ends up being about 6 cups of flour altogether. And then after I put in some white flour, then I like to add in some whole wheat flour. Adds fiber, and it actually makes it taste better. By the way, this is a really, really good process to do on Friday afternoons. We're getting ready for Shabbat, because I find that it helps relax me, because it gets a lot of the stress of the week out. When it gets this thick, instead of stirring it, I can no longer stir it. I have to pat it down with a spoon. I'm going to have to use my hands. So I'm just going to put a little bit more white flour in there, and it's not really good to start using your hands until it's not very sticky. Okay, so now I'm ready to start using my hands, and when I do it, I don't stick my fingers in the dough. I put my hands underneath the bottom of the dough, and I flip it over very gently, and then if I feel that it's still too sticky, I just add a little bit more flour. And once it's not that sticky anymore, I pick it up in my hands, and I make it into a big ball. Plop it into the bowl. You get a dish towel, and you would soak it in water so that it's nice and hot. You would squeeze it out, and then you would put it over the top, just like that, of the bowl, and let it sit for about 1 hour. Okay, so it's about an hour later, and I'm going to remove the wet towel, and as you can see, the dough has risen tremendously. Now I'm going to take a little bit of flour, put them on my fingers, and I'm going to put my hands underneath the dough, and as you can see, it's going to kind of collapse the dough a little. And we need to do this so that we can pick the dough up. And now comes the next fun part, which is divide the dough into 6 pieces so that we can braid 2 challahs. Now, you're supposed to have 2 challahs for Shabbat. There are 2 reasons for this. The first reason is that God gave the Israelites a second portion of manna when they were in the desert on their way from Egypt to the land of Israel. And then the second reason is that in the Torah it tells us, Shamor v'zachor, you shall guard and you shall remember the Sabbath. So we are going to now grab a piece of dough like that. And I take out 3. And the way to lengthen them is to do this. Just squeeze them till they become almost about the length of the pan that you're putting them on. It's much quicker to do it like this than to roll them out. Okay, so we've got 3 braids, and then we squeeze the ends together. You might want to get a close-up of this. And then we just braid them so the braids are very, very close to each other. Just like that. Pinch the end, and then you can kind of squeeze it together so it has a nice shape like that. Now this is going to rise quite a bit over the next hour before we're ready to put it in the oven. Then I always like to leave a little bit of extra dough for a small personal sized challah. And if you have kids at home, this is a nice little way to make them feel special on Shabbat. So I just take 3 small pieces of dough, like that, lengthen them like that. So we have put our little challah in the corner like that. And then we're gonna, after I finish making all 3, I'll cover them again with a towel, a damp, hot towel, and let it rise for another hour. So about an hour has passed since we braided the challahs, and I'm going to remove the damp, wet towel. And as you can see, the challah has risen tremendously, and this is the second one I made, and this is the mini one that I made before. And now the last step before we put it into the oven is putting a little glaze on it to make it nice and shiny, and we do that with an egg. So we crack the egg, and we stir it with a pastry brush. Just stir it right up, and we just very lightly so that the braids remain intact. And then we are going to put it in the oven. Now, the oven should be set at 350 degrees. I usually leave it in there for 20 minutes. We're going to bring it over here to the oven. Put it in the middle rack. It's best in the middle rack. There we go. Set the oven for 20 minutes. Okay, so we're ready to take our challahs out of the oven. Here they are, nice and golden brown. Then we put a beautiful challah cover over it, and we put it all on our Shabbat table. Okay, so after we've done the blessings, we take the challah cover off and we break off a piece. Take a bite. Delicious. Shabbat Shalom from Shalom, Boston.
Schlucklasner in die Tatzen, wer wird Tatzen mich schatzen? Oi, oi, Gott ist größer, hat doch gewünscht mein Häuser, die mir sind gegeben, Häuser, wir sind ausgegeben, die wir sind ausgegeben.